In the world and the chaos of Donald Trump, some stories fall through the cracks, and I really hope this is not one of them. I would impress upon you, or try to impress upon you, that you need to share this video, and if not this video, find the source material that will be linked in the description and share these stories. Donald Trump, it will come as no surprise to you, but it is still shocking that a president of the United States of America is installing legit, actual white supremacists in the State Department. And some of this, the effort, I believe, is to change the political order and make white supremacy recognizable as a decent thing to be, right? So I want to talk about two people, Mike Benz and Darren Beatty, who are both avowed white supremacists. Both have been fired from their previous positions with the earlier Trump administration for white supremacist writings and white supremacist posts. We'll get to that. I'll link to that. Marco Rubio invited Mike Benz to the State Department for a little meet and greet, a little video, a little propaganda session. And it is my guest today that I want to bring on to talk about this. I'm joined by Nina Jankowicz, the former executive director of the Disinformation Governance Board for the United States Department of Homeland Security. Nina Jankowicz, thanks for joining me today. Thanks for having me, Jesse. So a lot of people will remember, I think it was last week when the thumb-shaped dildo with ears, Keith Self, he invoked a quote from Joseph Goebbels. Everybody's going to say, oh, it's not Goebbels, it's Goebbels, whatever. He quoted a Nazi while you were giving testimony before this House committee. Yeah. People might remember that. But I also want to enrich people with your expertise and who you are. You've written 2 books, 2 more than I've written, so that's great. In 2020, you wrote How to Lose the Information War, Russia, Fake News, and the Future of Conflict. And then most recently, you wrote a book called How to Be a Woman Online, Surviving Abuse and Harassment, and How to Fight Back. For my money, Nina, if you're getting dragged by the likes of Josh Hawley, you're doing good work. Josh Hawley labeled you a leftist radical, and I want to share 4 tweets that he included in his tweet. That this apparently is evidence that you're a radical leftist. You said, even better if we owned it and called it America's systemic racism. This was a quote tweet of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. You said Trump talking about how he would put out that fire in Portland is the language of authoritarianism. It means that the violent clearing of protesters, arrest without cause, abuses of human rights. Now that's law enforcement. That's now law enforcement. That's lawlessness. And then you said also, I know I'm dragging on here, I am dispatching thousands and thousands of heavily armed soldiers, a sentence I expect to hear from leaders of authoritarian countries, not the president of the United States, in reference to my own city. And then, of course, this tweet about NPR. So you are being maligned as a radical leftist that is meaningless now by Josh Hawley and the likes of him, while Alejandro Mayorkas, the former Secretary of Homeland Security, had this to say about your qualifications, and then we'll get to the subject at hand.
So what we do, we in the Department of Homeland Security don't monitor American citizens.
You don't, but will this board change that?
No. The board does not have any operational authority or capability. What it will do is gather together best practices in addressing the threat of disinformation from foreign state adversaries, from the cartels, and disseminate those best practices to the operators that have been executing in addressing this threat for years.
Republicans are criticizing your decision, the administration's decision, to choose Nina Jankowicz to lead this disinformation board. They say she is not somebody who is neutral. Your response?
Eminently qualified, a renowned expert in the field of disinformation. Absolutely so.
Well, so now that we've established your bona fides, your credibility, the fact that you are been called by a former Secretary of Homeland Security and a good and decent man, eminently qualified, a renowned expert in the field of disinformation, let's talk about what's taking place right now relative to the disbandment of the governance board and efforts to, as reported in The Wire, Marco Rubio kills State Department's anti-propaganda shop and promises a Twitter file sequel.
Yeah.
Installing people like Darren Beatty, white supremacist, who, I didn't read it in the opening, but has tweeted things like, competent white men must be in charge if you want things to work. Unfortunately, our entire national ideology is predicated on coddling the feelings of women and minorities and demoralizing competent white men. As a competent white man, let me tell you, I don't feel demoralized, and I appreciate your efforts to combat disinformation. Tell us a little bit about what's going on with this, both Mike Benn's interview with Marco Rubio, but also Darren Beatty and his involvement in what will surely be more disinformation in the name of squelching disinformation.
Yeah, absolutely. So Jesse, what we've had over the past couple of years, it's been about 3 years since Mayorkas was on TV defending me. And it's been a horrible 3 years for the disinformation research community. Charlatans like Josh Hawley and Jim Jordan and these two white supremacists, Mike Benz and Darren Beatty, have been going after me and my colleagues who've been standing up for the truth and against not only Republican lies, but lies coming from Russia, lies coming from China, lies coming from Iran that are meant to disenfranchise Americans and get us disengaged from the American political system. And so there have been research institutions that have been disbanded. My entity at DHS was disbanded 3 years ago. I resigned because I was dealing with death threats just a couple weeks away from becoming a mom. And those are not the only victims, right? Now, the shop that was set up in a bipartisan effort from two senators, Chris Murphy and Rob Portman, who's no longer in the Senate, back in 2016, when we had Russian election interference in the headlines, the Global Engagement Center was shit-canned by the Republicans last year and then kind of reincarnated as a new shop that has now been put under the guillotine by Darren Beatty. Now, Darren Beatty's an interesting guy. Again, as you said, he had spoken at a white supremacist conference and got fired from his job in the first Trump administration, then went to work with Matt Gaetz, of all people, and went on to found a Republican news website called Revolver that basically just prints disinformation. That's all he does. And now he's in charge of the entire public diplomacy department at the State Department, including axing this shop that was combating Russian, Chinese, and Iranian propaganda. So we've now shut down all of our defenses against foreign disinformation. And of course, the tech platforms in this Republican administration are in cahoots. So they've seized the means of communication. I don't know. It sounds pretty autocratic to me. Doesn't it sound autocratic to you?
It most certainly does. And listen, for the audience's edification, you don't have to take Nina's word for it. Lil Marco went on with Lil Ben Shapiro. It was like a meeting of the Munchkins. He went on to Ben Shapiro's show and talked about Darren Beatty having a role in this, the new combating of disinformation while they're shutting down efforts to actually do something about it. Watch this minute or so.
They were taking State Department money and they were giving it to these third-party groups who were supposed to be like independent, verified arbiters of what's true and what isn't, what's good and what's bad. And these groups were deliberately targeting. I believe you were one of the ones they targeted. I think the Federalists began putting labels on people. Now, you may say, okay, well, what's the importance of label? Well, that's not just the issue here. The issue is not only did they put labels on people, that was then used to go to social media companies. It was used to go to outlets and say, you have to deplatform these people, or you have to cut back on how much views they're getting. You have to go after them. In essence, silence them. So in essence, it metastasized and the metamorphosis into a government-run entity that was targeting political speech in America, labeling it disinformation, and silencing it. All paid for by the American taxpayers directly and indirectly. And that ends. So what happened when we took over, right before we took over, they got rid of this Global Engagement Center. They renamed it and moved it somewhere else. But, renaming something doesn't change it. You still leave the thing around. So we've undertaken, 12 weeks of looking, how do we reorganize this whole thing? How do we get rid of it? And that's what we're announcing today is we're taking the whole thing down. And it's about $50 million. I mean, it's not a small amount of money. And we're not going to be in the business of doing this anymore. In fact, we're going to be in the business of promoting free speech in America and around the world as a core American value. And that really is what we're going to be about right now.
Oh boy.
So the Secretary of State, while people who are here legally are being disappeared to prisons in Louisiana, if they're lucky and they're not sent to El Salvador, for writing op-eds, wants to be a champion of free speech while dismantling an organization that combats foreign propaganda and disinformation. Make it make sense.
I mean, everything with these guys, that every accusation they make is a projection, right? All of this hullabaloo over the past couple of years about censorship is to make everybody else look the other way at the things that they're actually doing or want to do, right? I said to Congress a couple weeks ago, we shouldn't be wasting our time on these imagined defenses of the previous administration when people that we invite here, Fulbright students, green card holders, people who are upstanding members of the society, who you may or may not agree with their political beliefs or their beliefs about foreign policy, but they have every right to protect them. And the Constitution protects people who are here legally as well. So, it's absolutely hypocritical that Rubio is doing this and going on these tirades about speech when, frankly, the Trump administration has had massive attacks on the First Amendment, dozens of them since just the first 100 days of his administration. So it's crazy and hypocritical, and it makes steam come out of my ears. I don't know. Can you see it? It's happening.
Well, listen, this Mike Benz character was, I think he had like a 5-minute era of employment with the State Department during the first administration. And it didn't last very long, but he's been on a conspiracy theory nonsense session ever since he left, actually attacking Marco Rubio as a deep state CIA plant with his foreign policy objectives to sully the good name of America and drag us back or whatever other nonsense. He actually is the one who sat down with Marco Rubio, showering him with praise while taking up for this Darren Beatty character. And I got a short clip of that. And then I want you to address what exactly the objective is. Like, they're spinning this as well, they were silencing groups and monitoring the speech of Americans, which is just another lie and conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
But first, here is Marco Rubio with white supremacist Mike Benz.
You mentioned this network that was paid through the State Department through grants and contracts. And my understanding is that network also targeted the Undersecretary for Public Diplomacy, Darren Beatty, who I believe played an important role in this restructuring as well. And credit to you and to the Undersecretary. One of the questions that remains, this is obviously amazing news, I think, to the entire American people about the defunding and the restructuring. There are lingering questions about what was done during that period, where we now have so many people wondering, was I censored because of something the State Department did? Was my news organization bankrupted? Were advertisers contacted about it? And there are aggrieved parties. There's an important historical record that needs to be unearthed. There are active lawsuits. There are many reasons for a public disclosure effort on top of this development today. Are there any efforts underway to be able to have a kind of GEC files as there were for the Twitter files?
Yeah, so I think what we have to do now, and Darren will be big involved in that as well, is sort of document what happened.
So, I mean, with all of these stories, there's so much to cover that the details, people's eyes glaze over. I mean, and I also don't think it's our role to just combat these lies and conspiracy theories because we'd have no time for anything else. But sometimes it's important to do so. What the hell are they talking about here?
Yeah, it's hard to unravel, even for me, and I've been steeped in this stuff for years. I mean, the whole conspiracy theory here, and let me say, it has no basis in truth, is that the Global Engagement Center, which gave grants to a number of organizations around the world to combat foreign propaganda, allegedly gave grants to organizations that they say labeled American speech and tried to deplatform people. Those grants were actually for tracking and monitoring Chinese state propaganda. Did those organizations engage in health of news network labeling? Yeah, they did, but not with State Department money. So this whole idea that $50 million went to censoring Americans, it's just bunk. It's not true, right? These other organizations, they've got speech rights too, right? We've all got rights to express whether we think your site, Jesse, or the Daily Wire or the Federalist or what have you. We have our rights to express what we think they're doing is right or wrong as researchers and otherwise. Just because you accept money from the government doesn't mean that you can't talk about that stuff. In fact, that sounds an awful lot like censorship to me, right? And right. Now what Marco Rubio, Darren Beatty, and Mike Benz are threatening to do is essentially, I mean, I wouldn't go quite as far as to say it's doxing, but they want to get the names of all of the people, all of these civil servants who took an oath to protect and defend the Constitution. They want to put the names of these people out there. Yeah, they want to publish their emails and hound them. And let me tell you, as somebody who's been the target of that sort of behavior from people like Benz, from people like Matt Taibbi and the guy, Benjamin Weingarten, who were the other witnesses at the hearing a couple weeks ago that you covered, it's not pleasant. I get death threats regularly, right? My family and I are still under threat because of the lies that have been spread about me. And so I don't want these poor, lower to mid-level civil servants in the federal government who thought that they were fighting against Russia, China, and Iran, and indeed that's what they did, to now be swept up in this McCarthyist, inquisition that the Trump administration is putting forward. That's really scary. It's un-American. Nobody should be interested in that. And one final thing that I'll add is that people like Beatty, people like Benz, and some of the other quote unquote journalists involved in all of this, they make money off of these claims. The more salacious the claims, the farther they go on the internet. They put them behind the paywalls on their Substacks. It's not there for public consumption. They are enriching themselves off of these narratives.
One of the elements of this that I think it seems logical, it seems commonsensical to me, is that a lot of these people, they talk about free speech because they want their particular hate speech protected.
Yeah.
For instance, this Mike Benz character, this is from NBC News. In interviews with white nationalists, Mike Benz blamed Jews for, quote unquote, controlling the media and for the decline of the white race. If you were to, this is a quote, if you were to remove the Jewish influence on the West, he said in one video, white people would not face the threat of white genocide that they currently do, taken straight from the white supremacist fireside chat of Tucker Carlson's show from a few years ago. What else do you conjure to be their motivation for, even Donald Trump right now is not going to enter into trade negotiations with the United Kingdom until they repeal their hate speech laws, as though that's part of our economic outlook. And it is all in service to white supremacy, but what are they really getting at here?
I mean, I think really it is a lot of self-enrichment that they want, right? Trump has essentially bought the favor of Musk and of Zuckerberg and the other tech executives, seating them in the front row at inauguration, because the tech executives know that the most powerful lobbyist in the world is the United States government. And now they've got it on their side. They've been fighting this regulation for years, right? And what does that get Trump? That gets Trump the means of communication. That gets Trump an ability to quash any dissent, not only through this chilling effect that he's perpetrating through these arrests and deportations and, floating if he's going to send American citizens to El Salvador, but the fact that anybody who cooperates can now be gone after through Musk, who can release things through the Twitter files. Zuckerberg could cooperate as well. And we're not able to get the word out. I don't know about you, but I'm not getting as much juice on my Facebook and Instagram accounts these days when I'm talking about Trump. And I have to wonder why that is. So again, every accusation is a projection. Everything that they've claimed has been happening to them for years is something that they're engaging in now, I'm pretty sure. And the funny thing is, Jesse, we don't have the data to prove any of this the way that we did before. Before, we could say to the Republicans, oh, you think you're being censored? Here's the data about how much juice you guys are getting. The algorithms are amplifying your stuff. You guys have the strongest
Daily Wire specifically.
Yes,
Daily Wire specifically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Not to mention Joe Rogan, right? And now all the social media platforms have turned off the data that researchers like me used to be able to get access to call BS on these claims. I wonder why that is. So it's all part of a broader enrichment and kind of power grab scheme. And I think everything, people say, oh, disinformation is a niche issue. To me, it is the underpinning of every democratic problem that we have right now with this administration. The lies are at the core of everything. And we need to work really hard to denormalize that, because they have frankly made it just, oh, it's okay. That's all right. Politicians lie. Donald Trump lies. I don't care, as long as, I don't have to pay a lot for eggs. It's extremely disturbing.
Yeah, it shouldn't be lost on anybody. I mean, we've heard every accusation is a confession, and it's all projection. The thing that they accuse you of monitoring the speech of Americans, you and Alejandro Mayorkas. Yet that is precisely what they are doing now. When people enter the country, they're going through their phones, violating attorney-client privilege with attorneys. They are detaining American citizens, sometimes at gunpoint. There was an arrest yesterday, and finally the release of someone who was born in Georgia, arrested for entering the state of Florida. And then when they brought his birth certificate out, they're like, well, sorry, there's nothing we can do. He's in custody.
Yeah.
We are in a dystopian type of time. We are sliding into authoritarianism, and it is combating disinformation, and through channels like this and others in independent media, that I think we're going to get a handle on it. But it's going to take the American people to stand up and do something to fight back against white supremacy, which is really the undercurrent here for all of the motivations.
Yeah, I'd agree with all that.
No question. I was just filibustering.
All right. Well, one final thing that I'll say, I think, now is the time for people to be proactive about this stuff. You're not necessarily going to change MAGA people's minds, but we can be good to one another. We can make sure that we are sharing sources that are vetted, that are trusted, that we have done our homework. And the other thing that I'll say, be proactive about your security as well. The tips that I'm giving to people who are, activists, who are in civil society, who are crossing borders right now, shockingly, are the tips that I used to give when I worked with Russian and Belarusian dissidents who are going back home. That's the situation that we're in right now. Yeah. So take care of each other. We've got tips on our website. I'm sure you give your folks tips as well. We need to be really vigilant right now and be proactive and not get taken off guard, because this is the plan. You've just laid it out beautifully.
Well, before you go, tell people where they can find you, and what are you doing now that you're not in an official capacity with the Homeland Security Department?
Yeah, so the last 3 years have been pretty rough for me. But over the last year, I got up and running an organization called the American Sunlight Project. We are a nonprofit, bipartisan organization that is increasing the cost of lies that undermine democracy. We do that through research and advocacy, defense of people who are under attack. And so if you want to support us, you can find us at americansunlight.org. I am primarily on Blue Sky these days. Oddly, also LinkedIn seems to be the place that has a lot of juice. Never thought I'd say that. And I'm on Instagram as well. But, check me out. I live for this stuff. I love being in conversation with everybody. And I really do believe that the antidote to all of this is joy and community. So I'm really happy to be here with you today. Thank you.
Well, thanks for continuing to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I appreciate it very much. If you have a question out there, we maybe could drag Nina back for a second time. You can leave a comment below. You can also call the voicemail line, 714-576-4054. Of course, as always, you can email me the old-fashioned way, daily@dollemore.com. Nina, thank you for joining me today. Everybody else, be genuine and take care of one another.